There's a photograph I keep thinking about. A man standing in front of a garden somewhere in rural America. 1923. He's not a scientist, not a professor, just a farmer. And behind him, rows of vegetables that fed his entire family through winter, through drought, through years when the economy collapsed and the stores had nothing worth buying. He didn't have irrigation systems. He didn't have synthetic fertilizers. He didn't have a gardening app telling him when to water. What he had were seeds. Seeds he saved himself, from the harvest before, from the harvest before that, from his father's harvest and his father's before him. And here's what nobody tells you. Those seeds were doing something that almost no seed sold today is capable of doing anymore. In this video, I'm going to show you 3 reasons why the seeds used in the 1920s were genuinely superior to what most people are planting today. And I want to be clear from the start, this isn't nostalgia. This isn't about romanticizing the past. This is about something very practical that was lost, quietly, over about 50 years. And that loss affects every single person who tries to grow food today. Stay with me until reason number 3, because that one is the one that changed how I think about gardening entirely. And I don't think you'll hear it explained this way anywhere else. Let's start from the beginning. If you go back to the early 1900s, the relationship between a farmer and his seeds was completely different from what it is today. A farmer planted his crop. He watched it grow. At the end of the season, before he ate everything, before he sold everything, he set aside a portion of the best specimens. The biggest tomatoes, the most vigorous plants, the ones that survived the dry spell in July or bounced back after the late frost. He dried those seeds carefully. He stored them through the winter, and in spring, he planted them again. This process had a name, was called saving seed, and it was so ordinary, so assumed, so built into the rhythm of farming life that nobody wrote books about it. Nobody made videos about it. It was just what you did. Those seeds were called open-pollinated varieties. It means they were pollinated naturally, by wind, by insects, the way plants have reproduced for millions of years. And when you save seed from an open-pollinated plant, the next generation grows true. It looks like the parent. It behaves like the parent. The seed works. This is reason number 1, and it matters more than it might seem at first. Somewhere around the 1940s and 50s, a new type of seed began entering the market. Hybrid seeds. And I want to be careful here because the word hybrid sounds scientific and neutral, like it's just a technical upgrade. But what it actually represented was a fundamental shift in who controls the food supply. Hybrid seeds are created by crossing 2 very different parent lines in a controlled environment. The result, that first generation, called F1, is often impressive. Uniform size, high yield, disease resistance. On paper, it looks like progress. But here's what happens when you save seed from a hybrid plant and try to plant it next year. It doesn't come back true. The second generation falls apart. You get wildly inconsistent plants, smaller yields, unpredictable traits. The seed essentially stops working, which means every single year you have to go back and buy new seeds. Now, I'm not saying that was the intention from the start. The science of hybridization wasn't invented as a business scheme, but the effect, over decades, was that farmers went from being seed-independent to seed-dependent, a practice that had sustained human civilization for 10,000 years. Saving your own seed became economically impractical almost overnight. By the 1980s and 90s, a handful of corporations controlled the majority of the commercial seed supply in the United States. Today, just 4 companies control more than half of all seeds sold globally. Think about that for a moment. The diversity of the seed world, built over thousands of years of human agriculture across hundreds of cultures and climates, now flows through 4 companies. The 1920s farmer saved seed as naturally as breathing. Today, saving seed from a hybrid variety is not just ineffective. In some cases involving patented genetics, it can actually be illegal. I want to ask you something right now, and I genuinely want to know your answer. Have you ever tried saving seeds from your own garden? Just drop a yes or a no in the comments below. No judgment either way. I'm honestly curious how many people watching this still do it, and how many have never even tried. Now let's talk about something that affects you every single time you sit down to eat. There was a landmark study published in the Journal of the American College of Nutrition that compared the nutritional content of 43 different vegetables and fruits between 1950 and 1999. The findings were striking. Across the board, there were reliable declines in the amount of protein, calcium, phosphorus, iron, riboflavin, and vitamin C in the foods tested. And this wasn't a fringe study. It's been replicated and expanded since then. Researchers in the United Kingdom found similar patterns in their own data. The vegetables on your plate today, even if you grow them from a good seed in good soil, are nutritionally different from the vegetables on your great-grandmother's plate. The question is why? Part of the answer is soil depletion, which is its own long conversation. But a significant part of the answer is the seeds themselves. When commercial agriculture shifted its priorities in the 20th century, the traits being selected for changed completely. The 1920s farmer selected his seeds based on flavor, hardiness, productivity in his specific climate and nutritional value, even if he couldn't have named it as such. He kept what tasted best. He kept what kept his family healthy through winter. Modern commercial seed development selects for different things entirely. Yield per acre, shelf life for long-distance transport, visual uniformity, resistance to mechanical harvesting. A tomato that can be picked green in Florida, spend 2 weeks in a refrigerated truck, arrive in a warehouse in Ohio, sit on a shelf for another week, and still look red and round when you pick it up. That tomato was engineered for the supply chain, not for you. And here's what that engineering cost. The old varieties, the ones from the 1920s and before, had deep root systems. They grew slower. They pulled more minerals from the soil. They developed more complex secondary compounds, the things that give vegetables their flavor and much of their nutritional value. The selection pressure over generations of seed saving had tuned those plants to their environment in incredibly precise ways. The new varieties grow faster, they're bigger, they look better, and they taste like almost nothing. Your great-grandmother's tomato tasted like a tomato. The kind where you ate it standing over the kitchen sink because the juice ran down your arm. You know that taste. Most of us have experienced it once or twice, from someone's backyard, from a farmer's market, from an heirloom variety. And then we go to the grocery store and we wonder why the tomatoes there taste like wet cardboard. That's not your imagination. That's the seed. Now we come to reason number 3, and this is the one I promised you at the start. The one that doesn't get talked about enough. I want you to think about what a seed actually is. Not in a poetic way. In a practical, biological way. A seed is not just a packet of genetic instructions. It's a compressed history. It carries within it the record of every environment it has survived. Every drought, every cold snap, every particular combination of soil microbes it grew in, every pest pressure it adapted to resist. When a variety of open-pollinated seed has been grown in the same region for 50 years or 100 years, it has been tested against 50 or 100 seasons of real conditions. The plants that didn't make it didn't pass on their genetics. The plants that thrived, that found a way to deal with the late frost or the dry August or the particular fungal pressure of that valley, those are the ones whose seeds got saved. Generation after generation. This is what plant breeders call local adaptation, and it is something that cannot be manufactured. It cannot be shortcut. It can only be built through time. The seeds of the 1920s, especially the regional varieties that farmers had been growing in specific areas for generations, carried this adaptation in them. A tomato variety that had been grown in the Ozarks for 60 years knew the Ozarks. It knew the rainfall, patterns, the soil chemistry, the heat of July, and the cold of September. It had been shaped by that place. Modern hybrid seeds are the opposite of this. They are designed to perform reasonably well everywhere. And performing reasonably well everywhere is not the same as performing exceptionally well somewhere. Uniformity and resilience are not the same thing. In fact, they are often opposites. Here's why this matters more than ever right now. Modern commercial agriculture is built almost entirely on genetic uniformity. Massive monocultures of nearly identical plants, all descended from a very narrow genetic base. When everything is the same, the system is efficient. But when everything is the same, a single new pest or disease can move through an entire crop like fire through dry grass. This is not a theoretical risk. It happened. In the 1840s in Ireland, a single water mold called Phytophthora infestans hit potato crops that had almost no genetic diversity. 1 million people died. Another million left the country. The Irish Potato Famine was not just a tragedy of poverty and politics. It was a catastrophic failure of monoculture. The seeds of the 1920s carried diversity within them and between them. Different varieties in different farms in different regions. If one variety failed, another survived. The system had redundancy. It had memory. It had resilience built in through thousands of small decisions made by thousands of ordinary farmers who were, without knowing it, practicing the most sophisticated form of biological risk management ever developed. We traded that resilience for efficiency, and we are only beginning to understand what we gave up. This idea that a garden should be built for the long term, that the decisions you make this year should still be paying off 10 years from now, is something I've been thinking about a lot lately. And it connects directly to how I think about what to grow. The 1920s. Farmer wasn't trying to optimize one season. He was building something. His seed saving was a long-term investment. His soil management was a long-term investment. His choice of varieties was a long-term investment. That same thinking applies to plants themselves. There's a whole category of vegetables that most modern gardeners almost completely ignore. Perennial vegetables, plants that you put in the ground once and come back year after year, often getting stronger and more productive with time, not weaker. I put together a guide on exactly this. It's called 7 Forgotten Perennial Vegetables. It's 121 pages, and it covers 7 specific plants that work the way the 1920s farmer thought about his whole garden. You plant them once. You learn them. You let time work in your favor. They're not trendy. Most people have never heard of half of them. But they are deeply practical for anyone who wants to grow food the way it was meant to be grown. If that sounds like your kind of gardening, the link is in the description. It's a PDF, instant download, and it's priced at less than $15 because I'd rather have it in the hands of people who will actually use it than sitting on a shelf. Okay, back to the seeds. So where does this leave us? What can you actually do with this information? The first thing is simply knowing that heirloom and open-pollinated seeds exist and where to find them. There are seed companies, small ones mostly, that have been preserving old varieties for decades. Baker Creek Heirloom Seeds, Seed Savers Exchange, Victory Seeds. These are organizations built around the idea that genetic diversity in our food supply is worth protecting. When you buy from them, you're doing something that matters beyond your own garden. The second thing is learning to save seed. It's not complicated for most vegetables. Tomatoes, beans, peppers, squash. The basic process is drying and storing. There are excellent free resources online. It's a skill that takes one season to learn and pays off for the rest of your life. The third thing is thinking differently about what a garden is for. If you've been gardening as a seasonal hobby, replanting everything every spring, spending money every year on seeds and starts and amendments, there is another way, a slower way, a way that builds instead of resets. The connection between heirloom seeds and long-term garden design is not accidental. Both are based on the same philosophy. Work with time instead of against it. Build resilience instead of optimizing for one season. Think about what you're leaving behind, not just what you're harvesting now. If you want to read more about the history of heirloom varieties, which old seeds survived and where they were preserved, and what the seed-saving movement looks like today, I've been putting written content together on the Hidden Soil blog. It's still growing, new articles being added regularly, and the link is in the description. A good garden takes time to build. So does a good blog. Here's what I want you to take away from this video. The first reason: 1920s seeds were open-pollinated, which meant farmers owned their food supply in the most literal way possible. That independence has been almost entirely removed from modern agriculture, and most people don't even know it happened. The second reason: those seeds produced food with greater nutritional density because they were selected for how they fed people, not for how they survived a truck ride. The third reason: they carried local adaptation built through generations of real-world testing. They had resilience that cannot be engineered from scratch. It can only be grown slowly, over time, through the same patience that every good garden requires. The seeds of the 1920s weren't just better plants. They were a different philosophy, one that said food should be independent, resilient, and yours. One that said the work you put in this year should still be feeding you 10 years from now. That philosophy didn't go extinct. It just got forgotten. And that is exactly what this channel is here to talk about. Which of these three reasons hit you the hardest? Was it the seed ownership issue, the nutrition, or the resilience question? Let me know in the comments. I read every single one. And if this is the kind of content you've been looking for, the kind that goes below the surface and actually connects the dots, subscribe. Every video on this channel is built around that same idea, growing food the way it was meant to be grown. I'll see you in the next one.